All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange pressure that rises the moment things go quiet. You reach for your phone before your thoughts can reach you. You open an app without knowing why. You tell yourself you're just checking something, but really you're running. From silence, from stillness, from that little ache that never leaves you alone for long. The night outside hums with its tired electricity, cars sliding through puddles, neighbours talking through walls, screens glowing like artificial stars. Inside, a candle burns low, its flame bending in the draught, trembling the way I used to tremble whenever the noise stopped. My name is Blaise Pascal. In my century, Paris was loud in a different way. Salons full of vanity, dice clattering on tables, laughter sharp enough to hide despair. Everyone feared boredom more than death. You've just replaced the velvet and violins with playlists and push notifications. Same orchestra, new instruments. I was a man obsessed with understanding everything. Air pressure, probability, the rhythm of chance. I built machines that could count faster than any mind alive, but none of them could count the moments I wasted escaping myself. I thought intelligence would save me, that knowledge would calm the storm. It didn't. The more I knew, the more I felt the void press its hand against my chest. The infinite, the silence, the unbearable question. After all this noise, what then? You call it anxiety. In my day, we called it diversion, the art of running from the weight of existence. You listen to podcasts you'll forget, scroll through faces you'll never meet, chase meaning in 1,000 directions at once. You call it staying informed, connected, productive. I called it pretending not to be afraid. And if you're honest, you know the truth. Even your peace performs. Even your rest needs an audience. Don't be ashamed of it. You're not broken. You're simply alive in a world terrified of stillness. I know that terror. I felt it too. The first time I truly stopped. No parties, no projects, just me and the quiet. I wanted to run. The silence felt like a mirror and I didn't like what I saw. But what if the silence you fear isn't empty? What if it's full? Full of answers that noise has been drowning out for years? So tonight, welcome, truly, to the Sleepless Society. A quiet circle for those who think too much, feel too deeply, and can't always find rest. Here, no one hides their restlessness. We sit together in the dark and let the mind breathe. Nietzsche stops by, Camus wanders in from the cold, Simone de Beauvoir settles by the fire, and tonight, I sit beside you. If this story brought you calm or comfort, leave a gentle like so we know you're here, and subscribe to Sleepless Society to keep the lantern burning. Every week, another wandering mind joins us. Sometimes a poet, sometimes a philosopher, sometimes the quiet part of you that still hopes for peace. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why you can't sit still, and why that restlessness, painful as it feels, might be your invitation to awaken. But before we reach that calm, we have to walk together through the noise, through the diversions, the fever, and the beautiful illusions that nearly consumed me. So come closer to the fire, my friend. Let the world fade into quiet, and let me take you back to the night when I finally stopped running, the night when silence itself began to speak. It was the year 1654, the night the world I had built from reason finally cracked open. I was 31, celebrated in Paris as a prodigy, a mathematician, an inventor. The salons welcomed me with applause. The philosophers admired my wit. I was clever, charming, and completely lost. I could predict the movement of dice, calculate the weight of air, and still had no idea how to carry the weight of my own soul. That evening, the city outside was sleeping under cold rain. I sat alone by a small fire, papers scattered, equations half finished. The candle burned down to its last inch, and something inside me, that quiet tremor I had been running from all my life, began to rise. My thoughts, usually so sharp, fell silent, and in that silence something vast flooded the room. Not a voice, not a vision, just fire. Living fire. It burned through every argument I'd ever built. For the first time I felt certainty without proof, joy without cause, peace without reason. Later I wrote those words trembling. Certainty, certainty, joy, peace. Then I stitched them into the lining of my coat so I would carry them against my heart, hidden, always. It wasn't a miracle, it was an invasion, the infinite breaking into my small, well-measured world. I had spent years trying to grasp eternity with equations, only to find it waiting quietly in the silence I feared most. Before that night I was the darling of Paris, witty, admired, comfortable in my brilliance. After, I could no longer pretend that intellect was enough. I had tasted something larger than thought. I used to measure the stars. That night I realized the infinite was measuring me. That is the tragedy and the glory of being human. We stand suspended between two abysses, the infinite and nothingness. We are fragile, temporary, and yet aware enough to know it. Consciousness itself is the wound. Every insight deepens the ache. Every triumph reminds us how small we are beneath the sky. So, what do we do when we wake up between two infinities? We panic. We build noise. We fill the air with laughter, deadlines, playlists and plans. Anything to forget the silence that once burned so bright it almost set us free. Man is a thinking reed, the weakest in nature, yet the only reed that knows it bends. When I first wrote that line, I didn't mean it as poetry, but as an observation of the human condition. A drop of water can kill us, a gust of wind can destroy us, and yet, within this fragile body lives a consciousness vast enough to imagine infinity. That contradiction is both our greatness and our torment. Everything else in nature simply is. The bird sings without asking why. The river flows without wondering where it ends. Only we, poor reeds, interrupt our own breathing to question the meaning of it. This awareness, this light that makes us human, also burns us. The more we think, the more we see the emptiness beneath our illusions. I called this sickness the divertissement, the great distraction. It is the instinct to flee our inner void by drowning in activity. When you cannot face yourself, you invent entertainment. In my century, people filled their lives with court gossip, card games, and theatre. Today you have your own stage, screens that glow in every pocket, offering infinite distraction with infinite emptiness. You think you're seeking happiness. You're only avoiding yourself. The human heart, I wrote, is like a king dethroned, too proud to be nothing, too weak to be everything. We sense that we were made for more, and yet we are trapped in finitude between these two poles. The infinite and nothingness. Anxiety is born. That trembling you call modern stress is not new. It is simply the echo of the same ancient truth. When you run out of noise, you meet the vast silence of existence, and you cannot bear it. You say your age is advanced, more connected, more efficient. I smile. You have not changed. You have only accelerated the same diversion. Your hands never stop moving, typing, swiping, producing, as if stillness were death itself. You glorify busyness and call it purpose. You worship efficiency as if it were virtue. You measure worth in output and exhaustion. But the heart, that old ungovernable organ, refuses to be quantified. It keeps whispering that you were not built for constant motion, that somewhere beneath the notifications and the deadlines lies a quiet room waiting to be entered. I once watched nobles ruin their fortunes at the gambling table, betting until dawn, pretending that losing made them alive. You do the same, only with time. You gamble with your days, trading them for approval, applause, or a few seconds of digital validation. You refresh your screen the way they once shuffled cards, chasing the illusion of control. But no amount of distraction will silence the question that haunts every conscious being. Who am I, and why am I here? Man's greatness, I wrote, comes from knowing he is wretched. You read that and think it pessimistic, but it isn't. It means that awareness of our misery is the first proof of our grandeur. A dog does not despair. A tree does not meditate on mortality. Only we are capable of seeing our own fragility and reaching for something beyond it. This is why we are restless. This is why you feel anxious even on your best days. You carry inside you a memory of infinity. Every moment of silence threatens to remind you of it. Your world disguises this fear with clever names: hustle, ambition, productivity. I am busy, you say, as if that were an argument against despair. You fill the void with projects and call it purpose. You chase promotions, new followers, new affirmations, all to prove to yourself that you exist. But tell me, has it ever worked? Do you sleep peacefully after your success? Or does your mind still hum with the same question? What now? In my time, I watched philosophers debate whether man was divine or ridiculous. I concluded that he is both. Man's greatness is great in that he knows he is miserable. The same consciousness that torments you is also your crown. You feel anxious because you are free, free to choose, free to create, free to destroy. The silence frightens you because it shows you that you are infinite and responsible. You could become anything, and that possibility terrifies you. So you run from it. Your restlessness is not madness. It is a sign of depth. The void you feel is not a curse. It is an invitation. You are not made to drown it in entertainment, but to contemplate it, to fill it with meaning instead of noise. Yet I know how hard that is. I too tried to escape. I threw myself into invention, into brilliance, into reason itself, until reason broke under the weight of its own questions. The night I finally stopped resisting, I discovered that the void was not empty at all. It was full of presence, of silence alive with wonder. Perhaps that is why I find your age so fascinating. You've built the most dazzling empire of distraction the world has ever known. You can travel without moving, speak without silence, consume without pause, and yet never have humans felt so alone. You call it burnout, existential fatigue, overstimulation. I call it the same old fear, the terror of being alone with yourself. You keep the lights on to avoid seeing the shadows. You flood your senses so you won't have to feel your soul. But listen closely, my friend. The void within you is not an enemy. It is the space where the infinite wishes to dwell. You run from it because you mistake it for absence, but it is the beginning of presence. The noise that fills your life is only proof that something inside you still aches for meaning. You're not addicted to distraction. You're longing for peace. You're not chasing productivity. You're craving purpose. And maybe anxiety is not the disease of our age, but the sign that our souls are still alive. You tremble because you are aware. You ache because you are capable of love. The silence frightens you because it reveals the truth. You were never meant to be small. So yes, I called it diversion. You've renamed it productivity, but the ache is the same. Beneath every success, every deadline, every glowing screen, the same whisper waits. Be still. Look inward. You are infinite and responsible. Now let's look at what that word productivity really means. You call it mindfulness, but you check your phone between breaths. You call it connection, but you can't stand being alone for a minute. You call it self-care, but you turn it into performance, scented candles, playlists, and a post about how you're finally healing. Even your silence comes with background music. Don't worry, I'm not judging you. I invented half of this nonsense just with fancier wigs and less Wi-Fi. Your age has turned distraction into a masterpiece. You've built an empire of escape so polished it no longer feels like running. Netflix calls it just one more episode. Your gym calls it discipline. Your company calls it pride. Your therapist calls it progress. I used to do the same. When I wasn't calculating air pressure or building machines, I was betting on dice or chasing applause in the salons of Paris. I told myself it was networking. It was really just noise. You have productivity apps. I had gambling debts and a very fragile ego. When I walked through those glittering salons, I saw the same hunger that drives you. Men debated philosophy with the intensity of war generals. Women laughed so beautifully you almost didn't hear the desperation in it. And everyone tried to sound certain about things no one truly understood. You've traded the candles for screens, the cards for cryptocurrency, but the rhythm is unchanged. The gossip is faster now, but the emptiness is the same. Humanity hasn't evolved. It's just learned to charge the battery faster. You wake up already sprinting. Coffee, notifications, ambitions. You wear exhaustion like a medal, convinced that movement is proof of meaning. You call it drive. I called it genius. Same disease. You're terrified that if you stop, the nothingness beneath your noise will finally catch you. I know the feeling. When I stopped once, just once, the silence nearly knocked me over. It whispered that my brilliance was just another kind of running. I didn't like that at all, so I wrote an essay about it and pretended I was enlightened. It sold rather well. You meditate, then check your progress on an app. You rest, then announce it online. You listen to a podcast about slowing down while jogging faster on the treadmill. I understand the irony. I lived it too. I once told myself I'd dedicate my life to God, and then immediately spent 6 months designing a better carriage. The human mind is a wonderful hypocrite. You treat productivity like salvation. In my time, salvation belonged to priests, in yours to algorithms. You pray to calendars, confess to journals, and measure your worth in deadlines. I did the same with theology and mathematics. 2 different altars, same worship. We both try to calculate our way to peace, but you can't spreadsheet your soul, and I couldn't either. I see your modern temples everywhere, glass towers glowing at midnight, gyms filled with mirrors that reflect your body but never your heart. You call them workplaces, wellness centres, creative studios. But everyone hums with the same prayer. Let me not feel the emptiness today. I used to pray it too, though my temples smelled more of ink and tobacco than lavender and sweat. And so you run, into distraction, into achievement, into desire. You run so far that you mistake exhaustion for meaning and noise for life. Don't worry, I did too. I mock the fools who wasted their time chasing pleasure while secretly envying their laughter. I told myself I was above it all, but I was just as desperate, only better dressed. The truth is, we're not terrified of boredom. We're terrified of meeting the nothingness beneath our noise, the mirror that shows what's left when all the distractions fall away. And yes, I'm in that mirror with you. My reflection isn't much better. A man who tried to outthink eternity and failed beautifully. But maybe there's something to learn in that failure. Because if the noise can't save us, and believe me, I've tried every version of it, maybe it can still point us toward what we're really missing. The greatest act of courage is not conquest, but contemplation. We celebrate warriors who conquer cities, thinkers who conquer ideas, but few ever dare to conquer themselves. I spent half my life running from silence, convinced that stillness was weakness. It took me years to learn that it was the beginning of strength. I used to fill every moment with movement, building machines, writing proofs, debating endlessly about the nature of truth. I believed that meaning was something you built, like an invention. But meaning cannot be engineered, it is revealed. The night I discovered that truth, I didn't find it in a book or an equation. I found it in the quiet, that same silence I had spent years fearing. I've told you about that moment before, the night of fire. It wasn't a miracle, at least not the kind people imagine. There were no angels, no thunder, no revelation written in light. It was simply a collapse, the mind falling silent long enough for the heart to speak. I stopped running, stopped thinking, stopped trying to fill the air with explanations, and in that stillness something vast moved closer, like a tide coming home. When I stopped running from silence, I wrote later, it spoke, and it said, "You are loved." Those words still burn through the centuries, though I barely understood them when I first wrote them down. The love I felt that night had nothing to do with reward or belief. It was not earned. It simply was, like gravity, like breath, like the light that fills a room even when no one's looking. Faith, I realized, is not a doctrine. It's not about proof or argument. It's the calm acceptance that reason cannot explain everything. You don't have to believe in God to feel it. You just have to stop long enough to notice the infinite breathing through you, the quiet intelligence that holds you up when everything else falls apart. I used to think surrender meant failure, that letting go meant giving in. But surrender is not defeat, it's discovery. It's the moment you realize that control was never the source of peace, only its obstacle. The more I tried to master life, the more life slipped away. When I finally allowed silence to lead, it showed me a deeper rhythm, one that doesn't need to be understood to be trusted. You see, the silence is not empty, it's alive, it listens. When you grow quiet enough, it begins to answer, not with words, but with a feeling that everything is exactly as it should be, even if you can't yet see why. That's what I felt that night. Not triumph, not revelation, but a tenderness so vast it undid all my cleverness. I wept, not because I understood, but because I no longer needed to. And here's the secret I wish I could whisper to every restless soul. You don't need to go through fire to feel what I felt. You don't need a miracle. Just stop running, sit quietly, let the noise settle like dust. Beneath it, there's something waiting for you. Something that doesn't demand faith or brilliance, only attention. The infinite doesn't hide. It waits for us to stop hiding from it. Once you've touched that quiet, even for a moment, you begin to live differently. The world still spins, the noise still hums, but you start hearing the music beneath it. You stop mistaking movement for meaning. You stop chasing light because you realize it was never gone. It was simply waiting inside the silence all along. Stillness is not an art to master. It's a friendship to remember. You were born with it, that quiet awareness that existed before the noise of the world claimed your attention. You knew it as a child, staring at clouds, watching the dust dance in the sunlight, losing time without guilt. You didn't call it meditation back then, you just called it being alive. Now you have to relearn it, and it begins with small, unglamorous acts of courage. Sit 1 minute in silence before touching your phone. 1 minute, no goals, no playlists, no enlightenment to chase. Just the sound of your own breathing and the gentle unease that comes with it. The silence may feel awkward at first, like an old friend you haven't seen in years, but stay, let it recognize you again. Look at the night sky instead of your notifications. Those stars are not ancient strangers, they're reminders. They've been burning quietly for billions of years without ever posting about it. They exist without hurry, without performance. If they can shine without needing to be seen, perhaps you can too. Walk without purpose, not towards something, not away from something, just walk. Let your steps fall into the rhythm of the world rather than the rhythm of your calendar. The mind begins to soften when the body moves without agenda. You'll notice things again. The hum of the streetlights, the wind brushing your sleeves, the sound of your own heart syncing with the pace of the earth. And breathe, not to calm yourself, not to be productive, not to optimize oxygen intake, just to feel that you're still here. Breath is the body's quiet prayer, whispered without words. I am alive, I am enough. You see, your restlessness isn't madness. It's the soul reminding you there's more to see. Anxiety is not a punishment for thinking too much. It's the shadow of depth. It appears each time your soul outgrows the cage you've built around it. You call it unease. I call it an invitation. Stillness doesn't make life smaller. It makes it infinite again. When you stop running, the boundaries of your world begin to blur. The air grows larger. Time slows down. Even the smallest things become luminous. A leaf trembling in sunlight, the warmth of a cup in your hand, the heartbeat of someone you love resting close. These moments don't solve the mystery of existence. They remind you that it was never meant to be solved, only experienced. The silence I once feared has become my teacher. It doesn't speak often, but when it does, it says everything that needs to be said. It tells me that life doesn't need to be understood to be beautiful. That peace is not something we find, but something that finds us when we finally stop trying so hard. And in that stillness, you'll begin to hear something ancient, the peace that lives beyond thought. The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me. Those were my words once, a confession of fear from a man who had looked too deeply into the void and felt it looking back. But now, as I sit by the window and watch the night spread like ink across the world, those same spaces no longer terrify me. They comfort me, because I finally understand that the silence was never against me. It was waiting for me. For most of my life I ran from this silence. I called it boredom, anxiety, restlessness. I tried to fill it with knowledge, success, faith, entertainment, anything that could keep me from hearing it breathe. But the silence is patient. It followed me through every invention, every argument, every sleepless night. And when I finally stopped running, it spoke. It didn't scold. It didn't explain. It simply said, "You belong to something vast enough to hold your fear." I once thought greatness meant control, that peace would come from mastering the chaos around me. But the truth is gentler. Peace doesn't come from conquering movement, but from aligning it with meaning. The stars move ceaselessly, yet their stillness is perfect. The tides never rest, yet they never rush. Even your heartbeat, that small engine of your existence, is constant motion, and still it is peace. I understand now that the real storm was never outside but within. All our distractions, our ambitions, our anxieties, they are waves stirred by a single question. What if I'm not enough? But listen closely, and you'll hear the answer hidden inside the quiet. You were never meant to be enough alone. You are part of a greater whole, as fragile and brilliant as a spark in the dark, as necessary as a single note in a vast symphony. You've walked with me through restlessness and revelation, through the banquet of noise, the night of fire, the terror of the void. You've seen that our distractions are not just addictions, they are signals, reminders that we were made for more than motion. We run because we sense that something sacred is chasing us, something that doesn't want to catch us, only to walk beside us once we slow down. So tonight, if you can, try something small. Turn off the light. Let the world hum without you for a moment. Sit still, not to achieve peace, but to let peace find you. Don't force your mind to quiet down. Just let it settle, the way water settles when left untouched. You'll notice how quickly the noise loses its power, how gently the silence rises to take its place. If your thoughts start to wander, let them. They're not enemies. They're just parts of you learning to rest. And if the silence begins to feel heavy, remember this. It's not emptiness pressing against you, but infinity embracing you. The same stillness that holds the stars also holds you. Faith, I've learned, isn't about having answers. It's about living with wonder. You don't have to believe in God or destiny or eternity to feel it. You only have to stop long enough to notice the quiet intelligence pulsing through everything. In the rain tapping against your window, in the breath you forgot to appreciate, in the warmth that flickers somewhere deep in your chest when you remember you are alive. So if you can sit still for even 1 minute tonight, without running, without scrolling, without asking for more, you'll have already begun. You'll have stepped into the same infinity that terrified me, and you'll see what I finally saw, that it isn't empty. It's full of life, of love, of everything that endures when the noise fades. And if this story brought you calm, send it to someone who keeps running. Tell them there's no shame in restlessness. It's simply the soul trying to remember its own vastness. Here, in the sleepless society, we don't escape the night, we learn to see in it. Outside, the rain softens. The candle burns low. The flame dances once, twice, and then settles into stillness. And for a moment the whole world breathes in rhythm, finite hearts, infinite silence, one shared peace.